Recording. Hello, keepers of Kingdom Pen. I am Reagan Ram, the editor-in-chief of Kingdom Pen, and you are...
I am Haley Long, the one of the editors and web publishers of Kingdom Pen.
And we went and got engaged.
Yes.
A couple days ago.
Yeah, we did, just suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of...
Shocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kind of shocked ourselves. Yeah, so we thought we'd do a video and explain how this all happened and explain why it's actually not as shocking as it would appear, but at the same time also even more shocking. If that makes any sense at all. It's a paradox.
Because we're full of paradoxes.
It's an oxymoron, because we're not morons though. So, do you want to start?
Sure. So, we're coming up on 6 years ago, I discovered Kingdom Pen when it was first founded, and I left a comment, which is now, you can't find it now because it's not public.
It's on an old unpublished post somewhere.
Yeah.
From the old website.
It's from the old one, and I had left a comment saying that, wow, this is great, I'm so glad there's something out there for young writers like this, and I was excited. So then he responds, Reagan Ram, and I thought it was a girl. Because
I didn't have a beard back then.
So I thought it was a girl because the only Reagan I'd ever heard of was a girl, and I'd never heard of another guy with that name. So then when he did respond, and then I clicked on his name and went to his profile, I kind of freaked out a little bit because I was like, oh my goodness, I was talking to a guy. And
so what's wrong with talking to guys, though?
Well, for me, for my family, we had a rule about talking privately to guys online, and just as a safeguard, and to keep, things from happening and everything.
And, that failed.
Yeah, a major fail.
Oh, getting ahead of ourselves.
Fail. So I figured out he was a guy, so then I clicked on his profile, and I went to his blog, which, what was it? I think it was titled The Hybrid Student at that point.
Yeah, I think it was, because I was, doing part-time public school, part-time homeschool, so I was, a hybrid student, and so I was blogging, and I had a blog, so that's what it's called.
So then I found him there, and I kind of just stalked for a little while before I think I actually left a comment. And then,
I think, and that led to a discussion of, communism or something. It was, our first conversation.
Like that. Yeah, it was something like that. But the funny thing was, when I first found his blog, my sister Emily was standing behind me as I was reading his bio and everything. And she said, oh, who's this guy? I was like, I don't know. It's just some editor for some Christian magazine that I just found. She's like, oh, he's kind of cute. And I was like, Emily, come on, seriously. And she's like, oh, he lives in Ohio. That's not far from here. I was like, seriously, Emily? And she's like, maybe you'll marry him someday. And I was like, that's ever going to happen. Okay, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard you say. So there was that. I don't know. You want to call that a prophecy or something?
I guess so. That should happen in chapter 2 of your story, or thereabouts, if you're on the 12 chapter scheme. But before the Embracing Destiny section, you have the prophecies and promises. So
we had our prophecy.
Yes.
Didn't know it.
Right.
The unsuspecting heroes.
Right. Getting some writing tips in this video too.
Yeah. That's a good idea to mix these in.
Yeah.
So then,
inciting incident was the comment on Kingdom Pen.
Yes.
Here we are in chapter 2.
So how our love story is like an adventure novel.
Exactly.
That's a cool thought.
Not everyone has that, but we do.
Yeah, we do. So then I started up my own blog shortly thereafter, and he kind of made it legit because I thought he was this big hotshot blogger.
But then I commented on her blog, so then you're like, oh, I better start writing because he commented or something.
So. I was like, oh, this is serious now. So then, that's when we officially...
Right. Yeah, so we were kind of commenting on each other's blogs and kind of would have discussions on different topics, through blog comments, which is a really awkward way to do such things. So, and then I got to talking about the one-year adventure novel curriculum, which I was doing because we found out we both liked to write fiction, and I was surprised to find she already had the curriculum, but she wasn't on the student forum yet. So I'm like, oh, you definitely need to join the forum so we can talk more there. So, and you did join the forum.
I did.
And that's kind of when our friendship grew a lot more. And
because we broke a few rules.
Yeah, we talked privately. We weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
But it's funny because
that's why he's the rebel. So.
Right. I was turning her, or making you rebel, I guess, too. Getting her into trouble. But yeah. So, but like we were, it's funny though because like our conversations were like just debating like different beliefs that we disagreed on. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It was like rock music,
right? Because
electronic music.
Back then, you didn't. It was like, what did you believe about guys who listen to rock music?
Well, we thought they were all just bad boys. Like, bad. Like, nothing good could ever result from that. And so I had this mental image. Yeah. So he read fantasy.
That's another no-no.
And sci-fi.
I wrote sci-fi.
Did video games. What are some other...
Went to public school.
Oh yeah, that was a major thing. Played organized sports.
Yeah, played organized sports.
So there was all these things that was like, it was just like a lot. And separately, like, I was kind of like, I really like this guy, even though he's, he's not what I'm used to. He's very, very, very different. And that, I really liked that because I don't like the normal stuff.
Right. It's the same thing for me too, because like up until that point in time, like I didn't really even know many Christian girls, I guess, and the ones that I did know were like, they were very worldly and weren't very serious, I guess, about their faith. And so yeah, then I met Haley, and like she actually was like, very conservative, even more conservative than myself, which shocked me. So, and I found very interesting. So I didn't know. Such people existed.
Your modesty standards. That was huge,
right.
though.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've written blog posts about modesty. So you were just so different, and you actually, like, were feminine, which was weird, too, because I'm not used to that in girls for some reason these days. So I think we both kind of, like, liked each other, but, like, tried not to, because... Yeah, that was not going to happen. I remember you saying one time that you'd never marry a guy who listened to rock music.
Yeah, I told him. I tried to tell him, but he didn't listen. So I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah. And then we would get into other discussions on the forum, like about modesty, and we'd be on the same side. Yeah. So in private we were discussing our differences, but then in the forums, out in the world, we were on the same side and fighting the same problems and
had each other's back.
Right, so we're like a team.
Yeah, because I remember several times you were like, "Hey, I'm the only one in here. I need some backup."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, yay! I can do that."
Yep. Yeah. So, and then, getting older and life changing, I eventually had to leave the forum. Didn't have time for it anymore. I was going to college, about to start going to college. We were still emailing a little bit, but then, like, your dad finally was like, "Hey, no more talking to guys."
And he found out, finally. So...
Oh, he didn't know.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I wasn't supposed to be talking privately either, because that was my policy too, not to talk privately to girls online. So yeah, then we stopped talking for 2 years.
That was a very sad.
Right, we didn't think. I thought that was the end. I thought I'd never talk to you again.
I thought, well, there goes that. I guess he's a no-go. But during those 2 years, like, there were several guys over the years who've been interested in me, and I've taken the time to consider the ones that were actually appropriate to consider, and none of them, none of them were like Reagan. Always in the back of my head, I was like, well, there's Reagan though, and there's Reagan,
yeah.
and there's no one like him, and for me, like, what stood out the most, I guess, what captured my attention was his nobility, and he seemed like a knight to me. And
which is where that comes from in the short story.
yes, yes, he seemed very much like a knight in shining armor, and he just was very, masculine and, stuck to his convictions, and his mind was not easily swayed, and that to me was a huge deal. That you stick to your guns and you don't falter and all of that. So that was in the back of my head all throughout. Like even after he was a no go, and it was like there was just too much, and I was like, well, okay.
Right, and it's always the same thing for me. Like you were always in the back of my head too, but it was like that's just not. There's like too much in the way. Like that could never happen. So it was never really seriously considered. It was just kind of in the back of my mind. Because yeah, you were pretty amazing. So and different. So. Oh, I'm a keeper. Right?
Oh.
So are you. You're all keepers too.
But he's my keeper.
Yes, I am. You're my keeper.
Mm-hmm. So then, let's see.
Yeah, so then how did we start talking again? So, mutual friend.
Yeah,
graduation party.
I was invited to a grad party, and I thought...
Yeah, so you were in Indiana. I don't know if we said that.
Yeah,
you were living in Indiana. I was living in Ohio.
And there was like 5 hours between us.
Right.
Because we had discussed trying to get together before, and I was like, well, that's not going to work. Because I was like, then I'd have to explain to my parents, and I was like, that's not going to work. So, and I thought it would be at this grad party. So my parents discussed it, and they're like, well, maybe. They're like, we'll just go and see what happens.
So you drive 4 hours or something?
Yeah, it was like 5.
5 hours to get to this grad party, and what happened?
And he's not there. Like, we waited, and we waited. Like
I wasn't invited, actually.
So we didn't know that. So we were on our way out of Ohio, and I was like, well, maybe I don't remember if it was me or my mom. I think it was my mom. She might have suggested like maybe we could meet him at a restaurant or something like that. So she asked me, well, what do you think? And I was like, I'm not opposed. We could try. And secretly I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this would be awesome. So she sent him a message, and he didn't respond until we were like almost out of Ohio. So it was too late by then. So we're like, oh, darn. So then.
So then I kind of started talking to her mom a little bit, and then somehow we got to discussing like the rock music and stuff. Like we were like debating a little bit, and then eventually she ended up inviting me to your birthday party.
My 19th birthday party
in July, and we were about to move to Florida. I was moving to Florida, and we're like, oh, known you for all this stuff. I always wanted to meet you, so I wanted to say, okay, well, I want to meet her one time before I never see her again. Probably never talk to her, so it'd be cool. So I go drive to your birthday party, and we talk for like 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, we didn't talk very long.
Yeah, and so nothing really happened, and so I drove home and then moved to Florida.
Yeah, I was like, well, there's that, because he's now how many miles? Like 1,000 miles away.
Yeah,
so I'm
over
like,
1,000.
that will never happen.
Yeah, but then I ended up asking you to join the Kingdom Pen staff, right?
Yeah, that was October of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that would be cool. So, because I'd always, I've still loved Kingdom Pen after all this time. And I was like, well, I always wanted to join something like this. So I agreed, and then I got taken as a poetry editor and then bumped up to editor, and then he started training me for his job. And so we had a lot of communication. Like, I don't know, it was several months.
Right.
Several months on end, because I had a lot of questions.
But it was always about Kingdom Pen. Like, it was always about work. It was never about anything else.
Yeah, it was mainly about Kingdom Pen. And we had, regular Skype meetings with the KP team monthly, and so...
But you were, like, always, like, dropping out because you have, like, bad internet connection. Always, your screen was always all pixelated, and you would freeze and then drop out. And so.
Yeah, it didn't make for good observation.
No.
So then, let's see, was it the next year after? Yeah.
Then it
the
was.
year
Then
after.
it was June again when
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered to record.
June of 2015, right?
Yeah, 2015. I volunteered to record your debut album because you and your sisters have a band called the Long Family Singers.
Yeah.
And I like to record music and produce music, and so volunteered to do that, and so flew up to Indiana from Florida, and stayed with you guys and recorded your album in 3 days. And it was during that time when I first realized I really wanted to marry her, and like that was.
I had no clue.
Yeah. it was just like it was like a connection, which is really cheesy and cliche. I didn't think they existed, but it was intangible. Like we never had any we weren't alone or anything. We didn't have any special conversations about anything. It was just.
It was always in group setting.
Yeah, it was always about recording, but I just knew, and so I had to go and try and tell my parents when I went back, and they thought it was just emotions. Like, they didn't really believe that. And they didn't know you at all either. So
yeah, I didn't know his family that well.
And so I was like, oh, well, maybe they're right. Maybe it's just emotions. Maybe I'm not, not thinking this right. And there's still all these obstacles. There's all these.
Yeah, there were so many obstacles.
Different beliefs and whatnot.
See, on my end, like during that week, I was like, I think this could work. I think this could very well work. And I was like, I'll just have to wait and see. And so then, towards the end of that month, the Lord wanted me to surrender all of this to Him. And I thought it was a total, you just need to give this up and let it go because this is never going to happen. I thought it was like a death to the vision. And so I let it go, and I was like, well, okay, all right, it must be a no-go. And so then there was another person who came along shortly after that my family thought would be a good match for me. So there was that interest that developed, and over the summer.
Right.
And then.
And I was told of that too. So I was like, oh no. Because I had not heard any such things from God that I wasn't. That you weren't the one or anything, so.
Yeah, and I wanted him to find out on his own. I didn't want anybody to tell him, hey, Haley said no. She took you off her list of possibilities, which didn't even exist. So you were the only one. So I was like, well, there goes that. And so yeah, not really. I mean, it was communicated somehow. You found out somehow that I was like, no, this isn't gonna work. So, yeah.
Yeah, so then we had the first ever Kingdom Pen staff retreat in January, so it'd be the next year, from June, around the calendar.
The beginning of this year.
Yeah, beginning of this year. Yeah, January, this past January, and with the Kingdom Pen staff retreat, and, I was thinking, for all I knew, you were, already in a courtship or something, so, I was trying to not allow that connection to happen again, because I didn't want to cause issues for you. Yeah, for you and your courtship. But yeah, so that's not how things worked out, though. It happened despite me trying to prevent that from happening. And yeah, so I was really, convinced again that I really wanted to marry her, but I still wasn't 100% sure it was God's will. So then after that, I just spent a lot of time praying and asking my family for, counsel and stuff, but yeah, rest of January went by, the rest of February went by, and there was still, no answer. So then I decided I was going to go on a prayer retreat and, go out in the wilderness, which in Florida is, the swamp, go out in the swamp, pray and fast, and
go visit the alligators.
Right, so finally got that scheduled, but then the week before I was supposed to go on the retreat, I just, out of nowhere, just got this sense and peace that I was supposed to marry her. And it was different than emotions, because I knew what the emotions felt like, but this wasn't an emotion. It was a sense, taste, touch, sight, sound, feel. or I said that one. You know what I mean? 5 senses. It's like, so it was
Tangible.
it was tangible. It wasn't an emotional thing. It was just like knowledge. It was matter of fact, and and I knew that was God speaking to me, and so then.
Well, during that time,
Yeah.
like after I left his house in January, before we came, I wasn't exactly interested, and because I thought, you know, it's still a no go, but there was still a little part of me that was like maybe just maybe. So when I was here, at his house, which is actually where we are right now,
Right.
if we didn't say that before, I it was during one of the meals, and I just got to looking at him, and I was like, the thought popped into my head: what if this is what you were made for? What if this is what you were meant for? Like, this is what if this is what God wants? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I really don't know, because there was still a ton of obstacles. Because I mean, there was still, I don't know, almost all of it, and like we thought there was doctrinal issues, and so I was like, I don't know. So I came home and I just had this sense of urgency that I needed to pray about this, and
Cameo appearance.
So I was like, I don't know why. I just need to pray about this. And several of my sisters, you know, were very close. They were like, you do realize that this isn't possible, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't know why. And my mom was like, seriously, this is not, I don't know that this is going to work. And I was like, Mom, I don't know why. We just need to pray about this. So, and for me, like, I absolutely love challenges. And so it was thrilling at the same time, because there was always that, you know, we're going to have to work hard to get there if this is going to happen. And that, you know, that was very appealing to me, because it was like, you know, we have this, you know, struggle, and it's going to be so worth it in the end. But at that point, I was like, I don't know if there's going to be like some great end result or whatever. So I kept praying during those winter months, and there would be times the Lord would give me specific verses, like when I was praying, because I was like, Lord, what in the world? Like, why am I praying about this so hard? Like, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I had no clue. And, oh, I think we forgot to mention that we had a group chat with our families at that point.
We did?
Yes, because that was started after
Oh
June.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You came in
June.
June.
I'm going to hang out to me.
Yeah, we had a group chat with some of my siblings and some of his siblings and my mom. And so we communicated through there, just always in a public setting, like amongst a group. So we would talk during that point, and so then my mom started asking me questions about Reagan specifically, like, do you have a problem with his music, or are there specific beliefs that you know, are deal breakers for you? I'm like, Mom, I don't remember any of the beliefs we disagreed on. I was like, nothing is coming to mind.
Because at this point you were over the rock music and the
at that point, yeah, it was I changed. It was no longer a deal, a problem, and so I was like, it's not a deal.
And what you didn't know is that in April I had finally reached out to her dad and asked and told him that I wanted to pursue marriage.
But I suspected, because my parents like completely stopped talking to me completely. And they stopped asking me questions, and I was like, this is a little suspicious.
Because they didn't want to give it away, because they weren't sure if I was acceptable or not yet.
Yeah. So the way we did it was I wanted this. I didn't want a courtship. I didn't want a date, and he didn't either. And so we had recently found betrothal, which in our case is kind of like, it's not the traditional betrothal.
It's not arranged marriage, if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, no. Because my mom wasn't on board yet, which is totally hilarious. But, yeah, so we, like, my parents were the one that was going to make sure that he was okay. And I didn't even know what all the process was that you had to go through in order to be vetted.
Right. Basically answering just lots and lots of questions.
Like 400?
Yeah, like over 400 questions about like theology and personal lifestyle standards and such.
Family, future plans.
Yep.
Things like that.
All that stuff. And so that went on until like I think late May, and then in June I was coming to visit you guys for your sister's graduation party. So
which is actually Mackenzie, who's also one of the poetry editors.
Poetry editors, yes. And I really like Mackenzie too, and that's not the main reason I was coming. And it's funny too because I get there, I fly in, and when they pick me up from the airport, they're like, "Oh, the graduation party's been canceled, by the way." But anyway, because of the rain or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, I spent 10 days with you guys, like getting to know you and stuff, and your parents wanted to see us interact, and they were completely convinced.
Yeah, because at that point the connection was very strong.
Right.
And
that was the first time, like, I wasn't actually actively trying to prevent something from developing.
Yeah. So it was kind of he wasn't very subtle about it, because like he would like help me with the dishes, and then we spent like a ton of time together, like talking. And I was like, my parents aren't saying anything, so this is obviously okay with them. And I had suspected that the trip had been pre-planned, even though it was supposed to look like it wasn't. And which it was pre-planned, so but I wasn't supposed to know that, but I figured that out.
Right. And so yeah, probably this is going to be a long video, probably. But
it's a love story. Don't worry. We're almost done.
It's a long story with major ramifications. So so then after that, it was like just talking to their parents, like, when am I, what do we do next? Because everyone was on board. And we're talking to your dad, like, so should we, tell Haley all this has been going on? Should, she have a chance to, think and pray about this, just, see if it's God's will, but her parents were just like, no, like, if you asked today, she would say yes.
And I would have, because at that point I'd already figured out that life made sense with him. And, I thought about, like, how do I know exactly that this is the guy I'm supposed to marry? And there was just, confirmation after confirmation, like, different people would tell me things, and I was like, you have no idea how out of the blue that sounds, but I know that is, the Lord speaking to me here. And the one thing that really hit was when I thought about life without Reagan. And that was one of the worst moments of my life, because it was like, no, that's not even a possibility. Like, the pain was so bad, and I ended up in, like, sobbing my heart out, because it was like, okay, no, this is the guy I'm supposed to marry. And at that point, we had been talking about, like, life goals that we had, and they matched up, like, perfectly. And so I was like, this isn't coincidence. So I was dead certain. I was like, there's nobody else for me. Like, there's no one else.
Yeah, so then it was just a matter of, getting together again so I could actually propose to you. So. And
mind you, we were still friends. Like, there was nothing stated.
Yeah, we weren't courting, we weren't in any special relationship or anything. We were just friends.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Kind of crazy, but.
Yeah, that's the way we like doing things crazy. So then your, parents decided to do a trip down here in September, which is now, they're here. But in case that couldn't happen, I thought that I would just fly up some random day and like set up a surprise proposal in the studio where we recorded your album, because that's where I first knew I wanted to marry her. And I think but then it was, confirmed they can come down, so I'm like, oh, well, it'd probably be cool to do like a, proposal on the beach at sunset, 'cause that's supposed to be romantic or something. But then it became clear that you were expecting something to happen in Florida.
He's not subtle. He kept dropping hints. And it just, I was like, and everything was matching up. Like, especially when they'd asked me, like, what my ring size was, and then tried to make the excuse that it was for a different sister.
Well, yeah, that was not supposed to happen. No one was supposed to ask you that. That was a blunder.
So then I was like, holy schmoly, this is actually happening. So, and then I just...
Holy flippin' fluffy cows.
So, I suspected, I was pretty darn sure that it was going to happen.
So,
in Florida.
So I'm like, well, That can't happen. Can't give. See, this is important for your novels. When you're writing the climax of your story, you want to give your audience what they're expecting, which is the proposal, but not how they expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in The Lord of the Rings, you expect the ring to be destroyed. You think Frodo's going to throw it in. But that's not how it happens. Anyway, some more writing tips for you. I decided to fly up a day before they drove down to Indiana and propose, again, plan B, or the original plan, in the recording studio. And so we got that all set up. And do you want to describe your experience of that?
Yes, I do, because it was, amazing. So that day, we're supposed to be preparing to leave for Florida. We have a 17-hour drive the next day.
19.
And, yeah, it turned out to be, close to 20 hours.
Yeah.
But, so I had to go shopping in town with Mom, and she was very adamant that it was just me that went. And I was like, that's not a big deal. I mean, we've got stuff to do at home, so that makes total sense. But there's all these little things, we have to have a seat in the van. And she tried to convince me that the van drives weird without the seats in the van. And I bought it. So I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. Extra weight, I mean. So then she said, Curtis, the guy at the library who runs the recording studio.
The recording studio is in the library, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, that's what makes it even more awesome.
Yeah. Books and music.
Mm-hmm. Our passions.
Yes.
So, so she's like, he called and he wants to show you something. I was like, okay, that's kind of weird, but okay, we'll do it and I'll just go see. Because I was going to go to the library and send him some stuff that I couldn't do on the internet at home. So I was just, I had one main goal. I'm going to send this stuff to Reagan and, totally make his day, and that'll be that. So then...
I had other ideas.
Yeah.
That make your day.
Yeah, it's flipped around.
Yeah.
So, plot twist.
Plot twists are good too. Keep that in mind.
So then I went down to the basement, and I went to the recording studio, and I was like, hey, Curtis, I'm here. And he's like, what did he say?
Well, yeah, I was standing, the room was, divided in half, and there was, an acoustic curtain down the center, so I was on the other side of this curtain, and on the side that she was coming in was, a table set up, displaying the story of our lives up to that point.
With the short story.
Right, with the short story.
That was posted.
Right, there's pictures of us, and then each picture had a section of the short story. So yeah, he opens the door, and he's like, check it out, man.
And I was just
Pretty cool, right?
Whoa, it was not registering, what it was, and he had a song playing that we recorded together.
Right.
And worked on, and, well, you worked on, I just did the vocals. So, so that was playing, but that did not register, because I guess I've listened to it so many times, it's just yeah, I know that song. So I thought it was, because I saw the picture of us recording, from last June, and so I thought it was, some tribute to my sister's group, and I was like, well, what on earth? So then I started looking at the photos a little bit harder, and I was like, wait a second, oh my goodness, because it was, of pictures of me and Reagan that had been taken, and there was a typewriter at the beginning of the table, which I should have started there, and I was supposed to read the story,
right,
and then get to the end, which was right next to the curtain, but I didn't know that, and all I saw was this little card that said, pull this string to find the answer. And I was like...
I want the answer.
I was like, because I'm very curious by nature. And I was like, oh, what is this? So I started pulling on the string, and nothing was happening. I was
because on the other side, I was like, oh, no. She couldn't have read the story that fast. What do? Do I just wait and hope she goes away and reads the story? And eventually I decided, no, I have to come out now because she's going to, peek around or something.
Yeah, which I was getting ready to do. And, while I was tugging on the string, for a split second, I was like, what if this is really what I think this is, and Reagan is behind this curtain? I was like, nah, he's in Florida. That's we're gonna see him tomorrow. Yeah. That's not gonna happen. So then I pull on the string a little harder, and just as I was getting ready to push the curtain aside, he comes out over on this side, and in this dress shirt and suit and everything, which I'd never seen him in before, and I was just completely floored and stunned, speechless, and I'm pretty sure my heart stopped at that point, because I was like, no way, or to be exact, no flippin' way. Holy flippin' is what I said. Holy flippin'. And So I was just completely stunned. Like, I wanted to cry because I was like, you're not actually here. Like, am I dreaming? And he wasn't.
No.
And so he...
I was very serious.
Yeah, he's very serious.
I'm a very serious person. Yep, so then, yeah, I proposed.
Yeah, he said,
It was 15 months ago in this room when I first realized I wanted to marry you.
And then he got down on one knee and he said, will you marry me? And did I say yes at that point?
You said yes.
And I threw my arms around his neck. And
yeah, and then she said yes.
Yes, yes. 1,000 times yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah.
That's how we got here.
That's how we got here. And let me tell you, girls, it's worth it.
Yeah,
to wait. It is like, I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, we went from being friends to engaged. And so the shock of that, like, it took several days for that
it's been awesome, though.
sit, like, to settle, because it's like, we're really doing this. Like, we're actually getting married. And
and, like, yeah, and, like, I don't have any regrets either about the, like, private communication and stuff.
No.
Because then we probably would have been doing that with a lot of other people, and who knows, what could have happened. So.
What could have happened.
Yeah, so, everything we did, the way we did it, like, people said it couldn't work out. And you wouldn't get to know someone well enough, and
we did.
How can you find someone to marry if you're not talking to girls privately online? You can't be friends. You're saying you can't be friends with opposite gender, blah blah blah. But no, we were good friends. We got to know each other very well in group settings and
in work settings. And we had a very deep trust for one another before, because we'd been through some adversity. This is several years in the making, and. We each had each other's backs through that. So we knew that, there was this deep sense of trust, and that we could rely on the other person. So that was a huge thing that made a difference in our relationship. Was that we had this serious
So it just made sense
trust.
to get engaged.
Yeah, just made total sense just to do life together.
Yep. So that is our story.
Yeah.
So 2 Kingdom Pen staff members are going to get married.
So, moral of the story, join KP.
And
you might end up married.
Yes.